All right, I am going to move forward over to page 10. And we're in a math discourse webinar, so we got to start off with a math problem. So this is going to be kind of fun. I want you to take a look at page 10 and see if you can, based on this, what we're seeing here, kind of a unique math problem, if you would be able to find the value of what I'll call L. It's kind of like that L, that right angle shape there. Given the information that you have right now, would you be able to find the value of that abstract image, that L? And of course, the answer is no, you can't do that. We clearly do not have enough information to solve this problem. I've actually done this on purpose to help remind ourselves that as math teachers, we're sort of teaching a language to our students, right? And it helps to have a reminder of that. If we're always teaching that language in the abstract without any context like we have here, it can leave many of our students behind. So whenever possible, we have to keep this in mind and try to incorporate what is known as a CRA approach. So let's take a minute and we'll talk about CRA, and then we'll come back to this problem and we'll add a little bit more context so we can solve it. So on page 11, we've got our CRA description. So the CRA stands for Concrete Representational Abstract. It's a research-based sequence of instruction for teaching mathematics, which goes back to the work of Jerome Bruner and Jean Piaget. So let me frame it like this. If you were teaching a baby to speak and you wanted that baby to learn the word ball, you probably wouldn't show them the word ball, you'd show them an actual ball, right? So the same applies to teaching math. We want to begin by building a concrete understanding through the use of physical objects, and then follow that up with having our students represent those objects with quick pictures, and then finally moving to our more efficient but abstract approaches to solving problems. So I'm not saying that you need to teach calculus with base 10 blocks, but it does serve as a good reminder that oftentimes when our students don't get it, it's the abstract that they don't get. And if we're able to translate that for them, it can do wonders, right? So this is another reason that we want to talk about discourse today, is to help our students move through this progression of understanding so that they have that foundational understanding of the underlying concepts, and they can kind of better understand what they're learning and be able to process that through discourse and through conversation. Now, if you'd like to learn more about CRA, if that concept is a new one to you, I've included a short video at the end of this file, and also it's going to be in that attachment whenever you download the notebook file after the webinar is complete and it's uploaded to the Smart Training site. So with the CRA in mind, let's head over to page 12 and we're going to see the return of our abstract crazy problem. And we're going to begin to provide some context for that. So do you see that large symbol on the right? Looks like a tic-tac-toe board. Well, this is a clue to the value of the symbols in our equations. So I want you to think about the shapes that you see in the equations and how they relate to that tic-tac-toe board shape on the right. In fact, in Smart Learning Suite Online, you have access to a pen tool on the left-hand side, kind of in the middle of your screen. If you're on a smaller display, it might just look like 3 dots. If you select those 3 dots, it'll open up your selection there. And you have a cursor tool, it kind of looks like a hand. You've got a pen tool, and you have an eraser. Go ahead and select that pen tool, and you can draw right on that tic-tac-toe board shape to kind of pull out some of the similarities that you're seeing between that shape and the images that you're seeing in the equation. Okay. And if that's not quite still, not really quite making sense to you just yet, that's okay. We're going to provide some more context and lead you in the right direction on our next page.
And anyone who's using a mobile device like a smartphone, just make sure that you click those 3 dots under the arrows, and that will bring up the menu for the pen tool.
Awesome. Thanks, Jen.
You're welcome.
Okay, so it might be starting to reveal the values here, but maybe not. So let's head over to page 13. We'll get a little bit more context. And there, I've added on the tic-tac-toe board some dice, kind of like dice images, right? And you can kind of see, oh, it looks like there's 6 dots over there, or 9 dots on the bottom. And What does it all mean? So I'm wondering if that might provide a little more context. And with this context, now that we can see more of like, in this case, a representation, right? So we're seeing a pictorial representation of the value of some of these abstract images. It helps us start to understand what we're looking at over there on the equations on the right, on the left. So in a moment, as you guys think about that, I just want to let you know I'm going to be starting up a Smart Lab activity called Shout It Out. Now, this is all about discourse. So at some point, even though all of our students, they are going to be navigating through their different Smart Learning Suite online lessons at their own pace, and they might be doing some different activities. At some point, we need to kind of bring that conversation back together as a whole group. So that's exactly what Shout It Out is going to do. Regardless of what page you are in the file, when I start this Shout It Out, it's going to bring everyone together. And I'm going to have two categories on the Shout It Out. One of those is going to be for you to share your solution for the L shape. What did you come up with? What do you think that might equal? And then the other opportunity you're going to have to shout it out is going to be to describe how you figured that out. How did you determine what the value was for L? Or maybe you have a question about how people are figuring it out. So without further ado, I'm going to navigate to my next page. I'm going to start the shout it out. So it's going to take over your screen. You're going to have a large text box in the middle. And then below that, you'll have a drop-down menu. And the drop-down menu will allow you to select which question you're answering. Are you going to tell what the value is, or are you going to enter in how you determined that value? Okay, so I'm starting the activity. So if you were able to go over to Hello Smart and log in with the code 1813, then at this point, your lesson has been taken over by the Shout It Out, and you're going to be able to contribute your own responses to that.
Oh, look at that. We're getting some great responses already.
Oh, cool. And you can see one thing to note about Shout It Out, if you're not familiar with it, when I'm building the Shout It Out, I have the opportunity to decide if I want that Shout It Out to be anonymous or if I want your name attached to it. Now, if I'm at the beginning of a lesson, I'm kind of doing a formative assessment, and I want to make sure that my students feel comfortable answering that question, then more than likely, I'm going to keep it anonymous just so we can get those brainstorming ideas out there and we can kind of build our discussion around that, right? So that's a fantastic feature within Shout It Out, is that I'm able to, make that happen. I can make it anonymous. And then later on, if I want a little bit more accountability attached to the Shout It Out, then I can switch it over and make it so that the student's name is associated with the response that they give. All right, so we are getting some interesting responses. I'm seeing a lot of threes. There's a 3 with a question mark. Maybe we're not quite sure what the value is, but we're thinking it might be 3, and that's all good. And we're seeing some different options out there. 6, 9. One person put a little more context there. They said the upper right square is 3 because, and I'm thinking maybe they send it in a little sooner than they wanted to. Describe your solution strategy. I love the response.
That's my favorite.
That can be difficult, right? It could be difficult, and we're going to talk about that. Like at first, when we have math discourse happening in our classroom, some of our students might not feel comfortable with that. They're like, I don't really know how to describe. There's a whole variety of reasons why it could be hard for people to start to explain their thinking in math. But I think the value in them explaining their thinking is like, it really helps them to process it and really think more deeply about what it is that they're doing. Okay, so I'm going to click on some of these responses that are coming in, and we're going to see what some of our participants have to say. Okay, so I'm going to choose this one here, and we see it pops up in the center of the screen. And this participant said that the L equals the 3 box, the C shape, I'll call it, equals a 6 box, and L plus L equals C, so 3 plus 3 equals 6. Very thorough. I love it. And then this response here says each spot in the grid has a numeric value, starting with the top left-hand corner equaling 1 and the bottom right-hand corner equaling 9. Awesome. We have some people with great attention to precision, right? If you know about those math practice standards. Perfect. Awesome. Okay, so what I'm going to do now is I'm going to move on to my next page. That's going to end the shouted out activity for now. If you didn't get a chance to participate, don't worry, we'll do some more later on. Okay, but great responses, great participation, everyone. Okay, so yeah, now we can start to see the context behind our crazy weird equations, right? So if we look at, and I can use my pen tool here to draw it out. Let's go with red, that should show up nice. I can point out that the L shape was actually representing this part of our tic-tac-toe board, and that's representing 3. And then as someone described earlier, they said there was like a sort of a C shape. Maybe I can change colors here to show that one. So we had this C shape, that's the 6. And then the other value that we have included up there is the 9 down below. So again, the whole point of kind of taking you through that exercise to kick off our webinar today was that it just serves as a reminder that whenever possible, we have to kind of step out. Like as math teachers, probably a lot of you have a lot of mathematical knowledge, right? And sometimes it can be difficult to step out of those shoes and remember what it's like to be a student. And to throw up something like this, it kind of reminds you like, oh yeah, this stuff's, you know, it's abstract. It's not based in, well, it's based in reality, but it can be hard to make that connection for our students sometimes. So anytime we can step back and kind of think about that CRA approach, it really helps to add context for our students and helps them to make better sense of what we're talking about. And speaking of talking, that discourse, again, is really what's going to bring it home for students. If they're able to talk about it and explain it, then they really understand it, right? So I mentioned that the CRA approach, it was started by some of the research from Bruner and from Piaget. So if I go to page 16, I've got a quote from Bruner right there. It says, "Education cannot be reduced to mere information processing, sorting knowledge into categories. Its objective is to help learners construct meanings, not simply to manage information." So what this means to me is that a CRA approach is going to help you to construct that meaning, right? It's one thing to be able to go through the steps. I could teach you to multiply fractions in a matter of seconds, like multiply the numerators, multiply the denominators, you've got the result. That doesn't mean I can actually apply that to any type of real world situation. I have to understand like what's happening there. Why can't I multiply those things and get the result? So the CRA approach helps you to construct that meaning, and then the mathematical discussions help you to process that information.